Well, if you're a typical Argentinian, you're quite aware that food prices and fuel prices have been going up tremendously. Small-scale alcohol production is a way to produce clean food and clean fuel very inexpensively. This whole argument that when you make alcohol from a crop like maize, corn, that somehow you are reducing the production of food or making it more expensive. Food versus fuel argument, I call it. Okay, this is one of the biggest myths of against alcohol that's perpetrated in what I call the lamestream media. Let's look at the United States, where this myth comes from. In the United States, they grow a lot of corn. Monsanto's Transgenico corn. 87% of the corn that's grown in the United States is used to feed cows. Only 1% of the corn grown in the United States is actually turned into cornflakes, breakfast cereals, tortilla chips. Okay, only 1%. So the majority of corn is used to feed cows. It's not really human food, unless you consider, for example, in Argentina, most cows eat grass, right? You don't consider grass to be human food, right? Even though people eat cows afterwards. It takes 10 kilos of maize to produce 1 kilo of beef. And the reason is this, is that cows are not designed to eat corn. Corn is 70% starch, and so the cows are not meant to digest starch. When you force them to eat starch, they get bloating problems, they get digestive diseases, and because of inefficient digestion, that's why you get the 10-to-1 ratio. Okay. Now, if you take that 10 kilos of corn and turn it into alcohol first, remember you get three things. You get carbon dioxide, you get alcohol, and you get the mash. You get about 3.3 kilos of mash. You feed that 3.3 kilos to that same cow, it actually gains 17% more weight. So instead of 1 kilo of carne, you can actually produce 1.17 kilos of carne at the same time. It's a happier cow, healthier cow, less food, more meat, and fuel at the same time. What we're trying to do is giving people the power to produce energy and food where they are. During Prohibition, people made alcohol illegally, and they were called moonshiners. The revenuers, I call them the alcohol police, they would go to the county fairs and they would look for the fattest cows and the fattest pigs. These farmers were taking the mash and fed that to the cow. Because of that, they were very easy to spot. And so it's a real interesting part of the story, of history of alcohol, that you can actually produce food at the same time you're making alcohol. We don't have to grow crops or other plants to make alcohol with. Anything that has sugar or starch, we can turn into alcohol. We can actually use existing waste feedstocks. Argentinians love pan, bread. There are tons and tons of pan that are being thrown out. Guess what? That is free feedstock. There are peach growers in Mendoza, pear growers in Mendoza that throw away pears and peaches because they got a little bit of, damages, that you don't want to sell it, right? So they throw tons and tons of this stuff away every year. Well, guess what? That is ready to go feedstock for making alcohol. By making alcohol, we are actually using principles of permaculture. In permaculture, there's no waste. Waste is a input to something else. All these different wastes that we've just talked about are actually wonderful feedstocks to make alcohol with. So this whole food versus fuel argument is totally bogus. The whole question about food scarcity is a contrived argument. There is no reason why people have to depend on companies like Monsanto that are centralizing the production of food. Monsanto. Monsanto, for me, is the corporation from hell. The corporation from hell. What they do is they are the #1 supplier of a product called Roundup Ready. And this is an herbicide that's used everywhere in the world, okay? In order to sell Roundup Ready, what Monsanto has done is they've created what's called GMO, genetically modified organism. They've taken the genes of soja, of corn, and they've modified it. They've inserted these viruses into the actual DNA of these crops so that these crops, these transgenical crops, can withstand the toxicity of Roundup. So they can spray this thing without damaging, quote unquote, damaging the crop. It will kill all the weeds. It's a very simple, elegant solution for lazy farmers that only want to plant one crop and one crop over and over. It's called monoculture. When you do monoculture, it produces pests and weeds because they adapt to this one crop that's being planted every year, okay? When Monsanto came to Argentina in the early 1990s, there were still small family farms in Argentina. But since that time, they have literally destroyed the family farm system. The only studies that the American Food Drug Administration, FDA, has used to approve these transgenical seeds are actually produced by Monsanto. They're not independent studies, okay? And there are actually independent studies that are done in Italy, in Sweden, that show the real effects of eating this Frankenstein fruit. In a study that was done recently in Italy, what they've shown is that rats, when they feed them with this transgenical soja, the first generation, they have some problems with their organs, the organs starting to fail. The second generation, they become sterile, meaning they can't reproduce. By the third generation, they're all dead, okay? So because of Monsanto and some of the other companies, soja, almost all soja in Argentina is transgenical. Also grown in Argentina is maize. That's the second largest transgenical product in Argentina. Those two products are the basis of other human food products. And so by growing transgenical GMO, it affects the food supply of almost everything. We have to ask ourselves, what is this food that people are eating? What is it doing to their human bodies? This model of having a few companies control the supply, the growth, the distribution of food, it's only because of greed that we have this model today, and it's breaking. This model is self-destructing as we speak. What we're trying to do with the small-scale alcohol production is to provide the means and the knowledge and the techniques of how to produce organic food and clean fuel in local communities right now, okay? And it's not very complicated. It's actually a very low-tech solution.